Welcome back to the channel where we do down-to-earth movie reviews. We talk about the promotional aspect in regards to the poster to trailer, a little bit about the movie experience around the audience, time of day that I watched the movie, do some discussion around the audio and music, visuals, the effects, a little bit about the characters, and then just a little bit overview of the story. And then we wrap it up with what I think the score of the movie should be. Out of 5 stars. Today we're going to be discussing Primate, the new horror movie. I think the poster itself was typical horror fare. A lot of reds, a lot of blacks. There's a couple variations of the poster. The main one was kind of the red walls with the chimpanzee character being in the center, saying there's something wrong with Ben. And then the trailer. When I first saw this trailer, I was kind of hopeful that the movie would go somewhere different than it actually does. It looked like it could be somewhat interesting, but you can definitely tell it was a little bit of a low budget movie. And then the second trailer that came out was one of those trailers which they do sometimes with these horror movies where we filmed the audience's reactions to the movie. And as soon as I saw that trailer, I knew this movie was going to be in trouble. Because they only release those kind of trailers when they're probably not getting the best feedback. So next we're going to talk about the movie experience. I watched this on a Saturday at 2:30. There's a few dozen people in the audience. There wasn't too much of a reaction outside of maybe 1 or 2 of the death scenes. But pretty typical fare. It is a rated R movie, so kind of helps keep some of the smaller, younger teens out of the room to be obnoxious. And then audio and music, for the most part, pretty typical fare in the audio, except I wasn't sure if Father Merrin from The Exorcist was going to show up when this constant theme started coming through. I guess the theme song or the primary musical element throughout the film sounded very much like The Exorcist, and it kind of took me out of a lot of the scenes. And then the sound design, for the most part, was pretty good. Especially in regards to some of the death scenes and brutality around those, really kind of helped aid in the goriness and the aggressiveness of them. Visual effects wise, I was glad to see that for the most part, a lot of practical effects, especially with the Champese character being practical. I'm sure there's probably some kind of special effects in there. There are a few scenes where you can definitely tell that they used some VFX, and then there's this kind of wide shot in the movie that's also in the trailer about the house that they live in, where there's a swimming pool on the edge of this cliff. And in the trailer itself, it looked terrible. It doesn't look any better within the movie. But luckily, for the most part, a lot of practical effects, especially with some of the kill scenes. And then going back to the sound design, there was a pretty good aspect because the father in the movie is hearing impaired, and so there are a few scenes that play into that a little bit that I thought were pretty effective. But character-wise, pretty run-of-the-mill horror movie. One thing I could say is at least they weren't afraid to kill some of them off, like some movies. And story-wise, basically, it's, the daughter comes back from college with some friends. They're staying at the house over the weekend, and their father's going out for a business trip down somewhere else on the island, as this takes place in Hawaii. And their chimpanzee has basically a cage outside, or living quarters, so they can make sure he's locked up and safe from some of the animals around. Daughter coming back from college, her and some friends come back, they're staying the weekend, and the story basically follows them as Ben, the chimpanzee, starts showing signs that something is not quite right. So overall, it's them kind of running away from the chimpanzee for most of the film. There are a couple great kills in the movie. I wish they would have probably been a little more creative, but like, how much can you do with a chimpanzee? One of them was really good, and you can kind of see it coming a mile away, but it was great in how they portrayed it. But the characters overall, not smart enough to take out the chimp earlier in the film. A lot of people died in some very gory ways. Ends in your typical horror movie fare. I won't give away any spoilers. The one thing I would say that I actually liked about the trailer for this movie is it didn't really give away why Ben was acting strange. There's a couple ways you can think about it, and I was hoping it was going to go a different direction than it did. And that's all I'll leave it as. And you might get a hint in regards to the thumbnail I chose to put for this video. But anyways, that is Primate. Definitely, I mean, if you love horror movies, you'll probably enjoy it. I wouldn't recommend watching in the theater. I'd recommend a skip on that. And my final score on Primate is 2 stars. So remember, hit that like and subscribe for some down-to-earth normal movie reviews. And I'll be back next week.